Eyewitness News, the Northwest's most complete, comprehensive, and up-to-the-minute coverage, with meteorologist Dennis Feltgen, sportscaster Bob Bruce, and newscasters Ron Majors and Cyndy Brucato.
Good evening. For the first time today, the two defendants in the Piper kidnapping case took the stand in their own defense. We'll have a look at their story in just a moment.
Also in the news, a march on St. Paul City Hall by civil rights groups. They want an end to discrimination against children in rental housing. And a car broadsided a school bus in St. Paul this morning, sending 5 people to the hospital.
But first, yesterday we reported that Minneapolis Cable Systems is considering a lawsuit to stop the Minneapolis City Council from awarding a proposed cable TV franchise to a competing firm. That would be Northern Cablevision. Minneapolis Cable Systems says the council may have acted illegally last week and when it reversed an earlier decision and temporarily awarded the franchise to Northern Cablevision. Well, those companies are fighting fiercely for a franchise which is expected to produce several $1 million a year in income. And the announcement of the possible lawsuit has fueled the fires of controversy. Here's a report.
Mark Kaplan is one of the 5 Minneapolis aldermen who supported and continues to support a resolution the City Council passed in September, which awarded the proposed cable TV franchise to the Canadian-based firm Minneapolis Cable Systems. But now that the council has reversed itself by temporarily awarding the franchise to another firm, Northern Cablevision, Kaplan says he thinks that Minneapolis Cable Systems has good cause for a lawsuit against the city of Minneapolis.
I keep going back to the resolution that we passed on September 28th, which I have in front of me, and what it says is that a 15-year non-exclusive franchise, top-rated cable television communication system, is hereby awarded to Minneapolis Cable Systems. So I think that the city committed itself by awarding the franchise on September 28th to Minneapolis Cable Systems.
Most of the aldermen on the other side of this issue who support Northern Cablevision are in Las Vegas now attending a conference, including City Council President Lou DeMars. Today, DeMars said in a telephone interview that there was nothing illegal about the council's action last week and that the council can change its mind as much as it wants until a final ordinance is adopted. Northern Cablevision, of course, agrees with that, and a company spokesperson says the competing firm Minneapolis Cable Systems has no basis for a lawsuit.
The city attorney was consulted before the city council meeting on the 21st, and his reading was that the action taken on that day, having our name substituted, was proper and legal.
City Attorney Robert Alfton, who is also in Las Vegas, told us he agreed that the council's action was in fact legal, but that doesn't mean this controversy is settled. Because in the first place, the council is scheduled to vote again on this issue next month, and in the second place, Alfton says if there is a lawsuit, everything will have to be argued again in court. Byron Barnett, Channel 5 Eyewitness News, Minneapolis.
At the Piper kidnapping trial today, the 2 men accused of the crime took the stand in their own defense, and it's the first time they've told their story to a judge and jury. Dennis Kraft was in the courtroom and is just back. Dennis?
As you may recall, neither Don Larson nor Ken Callahan testified at the first trial 2 years ago. It was defendant Ken Callahan who was on the witness stand most of today. He denied having anything to do with the kidnapping of Virginia Piper, and he said he was not the man who later passed some of the $1 million ransom. When asked by his attorney, Ron Meschbesser, if you remember July 27, 1972, the day of the kidnapping, Callahan replied, "I remember it very well. In the morning, I went fishing with some of my friends." The jury has already heard 2 of those friends vouch for Callahan's whereabouts that day. However, a third friend, the man who was with Callahan most of that day, said he thought the fishing outing was a different day. But you wouldn't ask any of your friends to alibi for you, would you? Queried Ron Meschbesser. Absolutely not. I wouldn't ask it of my own family. Prosecutor Thor Anderson tried to shake Callahan's story during cross-examination, but couldn't. And the second defendant, Don Larson, was only on the stand about 15 minutes before court adjourned for the day, but it was long enough for him to deny, just as firmly as Ken Callahan did, that he had nothing to do with the Piper kidnapping. And tomorrow, we'll see how well Larson's story holds up during cross-examination.
All right, thank you, Dennis. And you may remember Marjorie Caldwell, acquitted this past summer of conspiring to murder her wealthy Duluth mother, Elizabeth Congdon. Judge Donald Barbeau has ordered Mrs. Caldwell to pay back $300,000 to trustees of her mother's estate. $300,000 worth of stock had to be sold by the estate in 1974 when Mrs. Caldwell defaulted on a loan that her wealthy adoptive mother had co-signed. This case is one of several involving Mrs. Caldwell's efforts to inherit part of her mother's millions. Cyndy?
St. Paul court settled a 3-year battle over inheritance taxes today. The court ruled that Sylvia Johnston, who lived with Vernon Johnston for 15 years without legally marrying him, was entitled to the tax exemptions as any surviving spouse. Vernon Johnston died in 1976, and the court ruled that since Sylvia believed that private vows she exchanged with him made the marriage legal, she should have the same tax exemptions as a spouse, and that ruling has saved her nearly $150,000 in taxes. Whether or not landlords should be forced to rent to families with children is still a hot issue in St. Paul. Councilman Ron Maddox's proposed ordinance banning such discrimination will probably come up for a final vote next week. And today, a coalition of civil rights groups urged the council not to put the issue on the back burner, as Marcia Fleur tells us.
Signs like this one are quite rare in St. Paul these days. There is a housing shortage, and 3/4 of all rental space is adults only. Landlords who speak through the Minnesota Multi-Housing Association argue that when more rental units are built in St. Paul, the situation will ease for families with children. And they favor this pending resolution, which would table the proposed ban on adults-only rentals and give them control of an in-depth study of the problem. But civil rights leaders today told reporters that tabling the ban might mean shelving it forever, and they certainly don't want their chief enemy controlling the study. They just want what they call an end to discrimination.
My question is, how do you document discrimination against families with kids when there's no ordinance to document it with? And because there is no law, most people feel that there's realistically nothing they can do, legally or otherwise.
Today's news conference was topped off with a trip to City Hall, but hopes to organize a march of 100 to 150 people never materialized, and less than a dozen people descended on the city council. But they claim to represent 40,000 St. Paulites who want to see an end to discrimination against children, and they say that's a political bloc the council has to reckon with. This is Marcia Fleur, Channel 5 Eyewitness News in St. Paul.
A state representative from Rochester is upset over stag films shown during a University of Minnesota workshop session last summer. Republican Kenneth Zube says 2 construction workers complained that the films were pornographic. Zube says they inadvertently viewed those films while remodeling the university's office in Rochester. The professor is defending the course, saying that the films were used to sensitize the students to different sexual behaviors and that the students were professionals. They were teachers, clergymen, social workers, and nurses.
After a 10-minute high-speed chase, police cornered the driver of a stolen van, literally. The driver lost control of the van and it smashed into a garage in South Minneapolis. Police are not releasing details, but the suspect was apparently heavily armed. He fled on foot into the garage and was captured without gunfire. A car hit a school bus in St. Paul this morning. Luckily, there were only minor injuries. The bus, loaded with 20 children, was on its way to Randolph Heights Elementary School. 3 of the children and the woman driving the car and her daughter were taken to a hospital but later released. The rest of the kids walked the remaining 3 blocks to school. When Eyewitness News continues, we'll hear from presidential hopeful John Connolly. He's in town tonight.
And we'll tell you about how winter came too soon for many Minnesota farmers. There's still $225 million worth of corn left in the fields.
Well, I picked the one that was smoother and lighter. That was Blatz.
Blatz is really good. I'm really impressed.
I chose Blatz, and I drink ribbon all the time.
It tasted better. Yeah, definitely.
You've seen beer drinkers like these picking Blatz over their favorite beer in hidden camera tests.
I'll drink some Blatz.
Something tastes better, you might as well change.
I would order Blatz. I like the taste.
Like gain respect for Blatz beer.
Test Blatz yourself. It's America's great light beer.
Are you hungry? Have a Totino.
Most frozen pizza crust tastes like cardboard. Not Totino's Crisp Crust Party Pizza.
Look at the difference between cardboard crust and Totino's Crisp Crust. No other frozen pizza crust is made like it or tastes like it. And if the crust tastes better, the whole pizza tastes better. Try Totino's Crisp Crust Party Pizza, because
nobody makes a pizza like Totino's.
In new high-heel mushrooms, so she's walking on air. Air bubbles. Millions of tiny air bubbles trapped in the unique mushroom sole cushion you. Unlike other high heels, mushrooms give you the original comfort sole. If mushrooms in any style aren't the most comfortable shoes you've ever worn, return them with your receipt and you'll get a refund.
Mushrooms are available at Powers.
What a night. Your husband had a flat. Minor tension set in. The kids smashed your favorite lamp. A headache started. Then, guests for dinner. Tension, headache. How'd you get to sleep?
I took Quiet World Nighttime Pain Formula. Unlike plain aspirin, Quiet World gave me extra medicine to quiet pain, plus a gentle relaxer to quiet minor tension, help quiet me down.
It really worked.
Quiet World for nighttime pain and minor tension.
You may know that Minnesota's #1 cash crop is corn, but what you may not know is that this year corn farmers are having a great deal of trouble harvesting that crop. Snow and wet fields are threatening to cost those farmers millions of dollars, which would be a blow to the state's economy. Bob Clark reports.
Only 75% of Minnesota's corn crop is harvested. Normally at this time of year, nearly 100% of the corn would already be in. With 1/4 of their corn still in the field, Minnesota farmers could lose millions of dollars. Snow and wet fields are drastically slowing the harvest in the southern part of the state. Some farmers, like Jim Nolan of Maple Plain, are even trying to harvest their corn in the snow. Is this unusual for you to be harvesting in the snow like this?
Yes, it really is. I've never seen it this way before. That it's been this late. And, well, I don't know, it's just the weather's been against us and we've had some breakdowns and we were waiting for the moisture of the corn to go down so we didn't have to dry it so much.
Corn with moisture above 14% cannot be stored, so farmers who are harvesting now must pay to have their corn dried, and liquid propane gas for drying is very limited in some areas. Minnesota's #1 business is agriculture, and corn is the state's #1 cash crop. If the farmers lose 25% of their corn, that farm loss will hurt the state's entire economy. Bob Clark, Channel 5 Eyewitness News, Maple Plain.
Another problem for farmers and farm-related industry, the rising cost of fuel for transporting the crops. Governor Quee said today farm fuel costs will be up 36% next year. In a speech to the Agri-Growth Council today, Quee said he favors the proposed oil pipelines into Minnesota. He said some good news comes from Iowa, the only state which has been holding up construction of the northern pipeline to Minnesota from the south. Now Iowa will allow pipeline construction through the entire state. Quee said he also favors the Northern Tier pipeline from Port Angeles, Washington, but the state of Washington and Canada have so far been cool to that proposal. The Agri-Growth Council will hear Texas Governor and presidential hopeful John Connolly for its featured speaker tonight. He arrived in the Twin Cities this afternoon, and he said tonight he will unveil his agricultural policy. Part of that policy deals with energy. In fact, Connolly says the agricultural base of this state depends on energy above almost every other issue facing farmers today.
Energy is absolutely pervasive and absolutely critical to the economic well-being of this country. And when you speak about the environment, let me remind you that if we don't have energy, we're going to have consternation. And the worst environment I can think of is to be cold and hungry and unemployed. And if you don't have energy, you're going to have all of them.
Connolly speaks later tonight, and we'll have a report on that at 10 o'clock. And some labor notes. Striking Albany teachers voted against a tentative contract last night, thus extending the walkout which began on November 12th. Last night's vote, 70 to 38 opposed. No further negotiations have been set.
And 110 nurses from the Hibbing General Hospital say they will strike on December 10th if they don't get a new contract by then. A mediation in that wage dispute is scheduled to begin December 5th. The Minnesota Pollution Control Agency says it will now take an active role in solving the state's growing problem of acid rain. That means that they're going to try to determine how big the problem is, where exactly it's coming from, and what's in store for the future. The state legislature will also be asked for money to monitor the problem. Basically, acid rain is caused by industrial air pollution, which in turn causes acidic precipitation. Fish and other wildlife are in danger in many parts of the country because the water is too acidic. The danger is growing in Minnesota, especially in the Boundary Waters Canoe area. A Northeast Minneapolis girl won top honors today in a children's environmental art contest. 12-year-old Janet Stein sketched a picture of her uncle's farm near Lake City. Her artistic talents earned her $300 from Schweigert Meats, sponsor of today's annual scholarship awards. A total of $1,500 was shared among 67 winners from the 5-state region. And Dennis Feltgen will return with the weather forecast after this.
Colibri demonstrates its extraordinary lighter. Touch sensor. It has no buttons to press, no levers to push. Instead, when open, it senses your touch to light electronically. For a personal demonstration, come to your jeweler and bring your lightest touch. A Colibri touch sensor. Beautiful jewelry that works beautifully.
Available at Bukowski Jewelers.
Guess what? But now, there's a surprisingly affordable Toro for when the going gets deep. A self-propelled snowbelter. A surprisingly affordable Toro for when the going gets deep. Haven't you done without a Toro long enough?
See the yellow pages for your Toro dealer.
Surround yourself with comfortable feelings for those beautiful moments in life.
We'll help you choose the very best for years of pleasure and beautiful things that last. If it's right for you, it's right at Wick's Furniture.
Wick's Furniture will brighten your home for those beautiful moments in life.
Oh, what a feeling! A Toyota feeling. We don't try to be first, just best. The new front-wheel drive Toyota, the Corolla Tercel 3-door. It's not the first front-wheel drive, but it may be the best. The Tercel gets Toyota's highest mileage. No other front-wheel drive has more front legroom, and it's Toyota's lowest priced liftback, the Corolla Tercel.
I think what has caught me by surprise, we expected the snow, and that was forecast and all of that, but cold, it is getting really cold out there.
That was in the forecast. You weren't paying attention last night. That was in the forecast.
No, untrue.
Colder weather.
I just slipped my mind for a moment.
The wind is going to pick up too, and so we're going to run into the old problem of wind chills. Wind chills later tonight and early tomorrow morning will be approaching 10 to 20 below. Now, wind chill by definition is an indication of how fast any exposed skin on your body will lose heat in cold and windy air. What the wind is doing is blowing away the warm air you've accumulated between your skin and your clothes. And it has other effects too. Now, water will freeze faster, and your engine block heater on your car will lose some of its efficiency. Your car, though, won't get any colder. Although the fuel needed to heat buildings will increase, especially the poorly insulated ones. And of course, your exposed flesh will freeze more rapidly. Now, the best way to fight a wind chill is to dress properly. Wear loose-fitting and lightweight warm clothing in several layers. And you should have a hood to cover your head and mouth. The whole idea is to trap the heat between your skin and your clothes. Of course, you don't have to go overboard like that. Currently in the Twin Cities, it's cold and it's getting colder. It's 28 degrees. The dew point's 18, humidity 66%. Our winds are northwest at 10. That's giving us a wind chill right now of just 13 above. And the barometric pressure is rising at 30.02 inches. Remember that winter storm that missed us the last couple of days? Well, it's still influencing our weather, even though it's way up near James Bay. There's a little pocket of snow that is completely rotated right around that area of low pressure and is now trying to work its way back into Minnesota. So there's a band of light snow and flurries coming towards the Twin Cities. But on top of that, there's a bitterly cold Arctic air mass sprawled out across the northwestern part of the country. That's the coldest air so far this season. It won't be the coldest, but it's the coldest we've seen so far. So on top of the light snow and flurries, we're getting a push of cold and windy air on top of it. So the result is some travelers' advisories for blowing and drifting snow in northwestern Minnesota. And this part of Minnesota and Wisconsin has to brace itself for what's up here to the northwest. Here's a low temperature map from last night. And to give you an idea of just how cold that air is, look up in central Canada. These are all below zero temperatures from last night, and readings in the teens were dipped all the way into Minnesota. The only real warm spot was in southern Florida and extreme southern Texas. In the KSTP Weather Observer Network, lows in the metro area last night were in the teens, mostly in the upper teens. The coldest, Delano with just 9 above, and the warmest was here at KSTP on the Midway with 24 degrees. Here's our satellite photograph for tonight. And all this dark area up through here is that band of light snow and flurries, which is moving right around that low pressure system and heading on down towards southern Minnesota. And this is that winter storm that was down in the Texas and Oklahoma panhandles yesterday. As we told you would happen, it completely missed the state. Well, right now in the KSTP color weather radar, we're looking within 143 miles of the Twin Cities. And as you can see, too, there's no precipitation taking place but that will change a little bit in the next couple of hours. In the Weather Almanac today, officially, we've had no snow at Twin Cities Airport. The high today was 30, and the low last night was 19 degrees. Well, here's what will happen. This leading edge of this cold Arctic air and, of course, the band of light snow and flurries is going to push through the Twin Cities and be all the way down into the center part of the country by tomorrow night. And then on top of that, this big area of Arctic air will move right in behind it. So it's going to set us up for some windy weather, some colder weather, and there's a good shot at some light snow and flurries later tonight and tomorrow, although we do not expect any significant accumulations. So here's that winter weather forecast for tonight and tomorrow. It'll be cloudy, windy, and colder with light snow or flurries likely later tonight and continuing tomorrow. Lows tonight will be 10 to 19, highs tomorrow 18 to 24. The winds will go northwest 15 to 25. Wind chills will be 10 to 20 below later tonight and near zero for most of the day tomorrow. Tomorrow night, mostly cloudy, windy, and very cold. Lows of 3 to 12. That's above zero at least. Thursday, partly cloudy, continued cold. Highs of 20 to 27. Probability of precipitation 60% later tonight and tomorrow, 30% for tomorrow night. Here it comes.
Well, you gave me a perfect idea of what to get you all for Christmas. I'm going to get you that little face mask for all three of you. I think that'd be great.
That would be really nice. I'd like
No,
that.
I thought so.
Yeah, Bob's already got one. That's right. Used it. That was when you broke your face on the snowmobile, wasn't it? Where you went. In sports, the Olympic hockey team is set to play the Canadian Olympians again. Bob Bruce has that story in a moment.
And now we take you to the energy saving division of the patent office.
I got it.
You got it?
I got it.
Got what?
What this country needs. Cheap heat. Keeps you warm all night, 4 cents.
4 cents?
4 cents. Keeps you warm all night.
Hey, you didn't invent this. This is a Northern Electric blanket.
Hey, I know it. And you know it. But they don't know it.
The Northern Electric blanket keeps you warm all night for 4 cents. Now you know it.
Well, I see you like fried chicken, Professor.
Oh, not just any fried chicken. I like original recipe from Kentucky Fried Chicken. There's a big difference.
A difference?
Observe. Delicious crust, tender, juicy. The Colonel's 11 herbs and spices. There is a big difference.
Got it.
No, young man, get it. Original recipe from Kentucky Fried Chicken.
It's so nice.
Big difference.
Nice to feel so good about a meal. So good about Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Want to taste a hot dog that's really better? Try Hillshire Farm Natural Casing Wieners. Hillshire Farm Wieners are made daily using only fresh meats. They're carefully seasoned and hardwood smoked. Natural casings seal in the meaty flavor. Delicious in casseroles or easy, convenient meals. A definite improvement on a great tradition. When it's Hillshire, eating's nice.
Cargo's 484 miles on 1 tank of gas.
To go long distances without stopping for water, drive a Camel. To go long distances without stopping for gas, drive a luxurious new 1980 Concorde from American Motors. Based on EPA estimates, Concorde goes 484 miles on 1 tank of gas, and our Z-Bar factory rust protection gives Concorde the only 5-year no rust-through warranty in America.
See your metro area AMC Jeep dealer.
The U.S. Olympic hockey team has been doing extremely well, but they will be tested tonight.
However, the folks that are coming into town tonight, they haven't been doing too well against the past few games.
Oh,
they had that real long winning streak, and now kind of like a neighborhood battle, I guess you would say, because it's the Americans versus the Canadians. The U.S. Olympic team takes on the Canadian Olympic team again tonight. This time it's at the Met Sports Center. This will be the 4th time this week that the Americans and the Canadians have met. Now, Canada's put the United States in something of a slump because they've won the last 3, but those games were played in Canada. The United States will be trying to break that 3-game losing streak, which, by the way, is the longest since the 4 straight that they gave up to the NHL teams earlier in the season. That's tonight out at the Met Sports Center. Well, Friday is fast approaching for the University of Minnesota Gopher basketball team. Can you believe it? The college round ball season is just around the corner. They'll open up at Williams Arena against Eastern Michigan. Eastern Michigan is just one of 4 non-conference games that they'll be playing at home this year. They'll play them all in a row. Coach Jim Dutcher, in announcing his starting 5 for Friday, says he will go with senior and 4 sophomores. The senior, of course, no surprise, Kevin McHale. McHale is back at center where he led the Gophers in scoring and rebounding last season. The cast of sophomores includes Gary Holmes, Trent Tucker at forward in the backcourt, Mark Hall and Darryl Mitchell. Dutcher says he'll get help from the bench, and it'll come from freshman Randy Brewer. You remember him. Zebedee Howell, I love that name, and transfer Carl Dale. Tip-off is at 8 o'clock Friday, and I tell you, it's going to be some exciting things going on down at Williams Arena. See how the Gophers do this year. Meanwhile, the season is ended for the Gopher footballers, but they did get together last night to take care of some unfinished business. We were on a little late last night, so we thought we'd let you know again that the passing of the traditional captain's torch took place last night. The 79 tri-captains, Mark Carlson, Alan Blanchard, and Glenn Borkin, all gave the captain-elect the new torch, and that's Marion Barber. He's a running back, of course. The university also passed out their year-end awards last night. Quarterback Mark Carlson was named the team's most valuable player. Wide receiver Elmer Bailey, the most valuable offensive player, and Keith Edwards, the Gophers' most valuable defensive player. Well, a strange thing happened last night after the Ivy League champions, Yale, held their annual awards banquet, similar to the one the Gophers held last night. At 12:30 in the morning, New Haven police responded to a brawl on the Yale campus. And in the hands of one of the brawlers, they found the Yale's championship trophy. Details are sketchy. 4 persons, including 2 members of the Yale football team, spent the rest of the night in the old Hooskow, which some of you might know as the jail. Despite their 2-game winning streak, the Vikings are early 7-point underdogs for their game in Los Angeles this Sunday. Minnesota's last trip to the Coliseum, I don't want to even think about it. Disappointing memories for the Vikings. The Rams thrashed the Vikings 34-10 in the opening round of the NFC playoffs. Oh, I can't forget that. The Rams, of course, will have a new look on Sunday. Number 11, Pat Hayden, is injured. The starting job will go to either Vince Ferragamo at quarterback or former Viking Bobby Lee. And Seattle quarterback Jimmy Zorn had one of those once-in-a-lifetime nights last night on Monday Night Football. In one stretch, Zorn connected on 14 consecutive passes, and even when things went wrong, it turned out right for Zorny. Here he overthrows intended receiver Sam McCullen, but Steve Largent is there to catch it for the touchdown. Zorn finished with a club record 25 completions, 3 touchdowns as the Seahawks hijacked the New York Jets 30-7. Spring training still 3 months away, but the San Diego Padres making a few moves. Today they acquired second baseman Dave Cash for a couple of players from Montreal. And finally, a quote tonight from co-rookie of the year winner John Costino. John says he'll stay with the Twins as long as they want him. And considering the recent defections of Campbell, Heisel, Bostock, Goltz, and many more, it's certainly good news for Calvin Griffith and the Twins. However, we'll see in several years when other teams start offering multi-million-dollar contracts.
Better save that one. That's the news this Tuesday. We'll be back at 10.
Good evening.